My name is Lauren Goodfellow, and today I will be talking about common moral ground and ethical decisions. So, the lesson objectives are basically to talk about the 5 basic principles of ethical decision making, the importance of ethical decision making, to explain the step by step process of making ethical decisions, to explain the different frameworks of ethical decision making, and applying the framework to situations. So, the 5 basic principles that all ethical decisions basically base themselves off of. Number one is the value of life. No ethics without human life. So, without human beings, there can be no ethics. Number two is goodness or rightness. So, all theories strive for this. That includes non maleficence and beneficence, so not harming others, but rather benefiting them instead. Number three is justice or fairness. So, treating others fairly, differentiating between goodness and badness. Number four is honesty. Communication is key, so there is a need for a strong attempt to at least try and be truthful. Number five is individual freedom or autonomy, so respecting the individual's decisions. Basically, that means that people, being individuals with differences, must have freedom to choose their own way. So, making ethical decisions, professional health educators must rely on their values and intuition when making decisions. They must possess skills and knowledge when deciding on the best possible outcome. The decision making process should occur before an ethical issue arises. Usually, a problem occurs when two or more principles are involved. And making the right ethical decision is also considered a form of primary prevention. So, steps in ethical decision making. Number one, define the problem, identify the ethical issues, and seek answers to relevant questions. Two, identify who will be affected. Three, contemplate ultimate goals and ideals for a moral person. Four, identify alternatives. Five, consider the probable consequences of each alternative. Six, consider the nature of the alternatives. Seven, reflect on yourself. 8, reflect on your society and your environment. 9, apply the categorical imperative. And 10, choose, act your choice, and monitor and evaluate the end results. So, there are 3 frameworks for ethical decision making. The first one is the consequentialist framework, and this basically just focuses on the future effects and possible outcomes that affect people directly or indirectly. And this is useful for situations that involve a large group of people, but it's not always liked because people have to compromise. Number two is duty framework. This focuses on the duties and obligations that individuals face in each situation. So, this framework has rules and expectations for everyone, and it has the advantage of creating a system of rules that has consistent expectations of all people, and it also focuses on following moral rules or duty regardless of outcome. Number three is the virtue framework, so identifying character traits to motivate us in each situation, considers all parts of their experiences and their role in an ethical deliberation. So, this is useful in situations that ask what sort of person one should be. And because it's based off of experience, it makes situations harder to resolve disagreements since there can be more disputes regarding virtuous traits rather than ethical actions. So, the frameworks altogether, all 3 frameworks can overlap but also differ. In most situations, all 3 frameworks result in a similar conclusion of what you should do, although they do have different ways and reasoning for reaching a conclusion. And because they do have different ethical features, usually the conclusion from one framework is different from the other two. So the assessment. Number one, what is not one of the 5 basic principles of ethical decision making? It's D, experience. What is not one of the 3 frameworks of ethical decision making that was discussed? And that is C. And true or false, the 3 frameworks discussed can ultimately result in the same outcome. That is true. And that's my work cited. Thanks so much. applying the frameworks, consider the parties involved who will be affected by the decision, gather all the relevant information, formulate actions and consider alternatives, decide and consider what best addresses the situation and how you feel about it, and act. You may never have all the information you need, but you need to take action. And then finally, reflect on the outcome.